Of Access to Integrative Medicine Health Institute and the GW Office of Integrative Medicine and Health, welcome to A Mindfulness Experience. AIM is a nonprofit organization with the mission to provide vulnerable and low-income communities with access to whole person health and wellness. The GW Office of Integrative Medicine and Health promotes integrative medicine by providing learning opportunities to healthcare professionals and healthcare consumers. Today, we have two very special guests with us. The first is Nyle, who will be doing our wellness talk. And Nyle is an occupational therapist and also the founder of Blue Nyle Therapy. And we also have Yael with us. And Yael is a Reiki master teacher, a board certified polarity therapist, a yoga therapist, a leadership coach, an organizational facilitator, and a poet. So Nyle, I'll hand it over to you for our wellness talk.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So my goal here is to try to fit as much information in this container of 15-20 minutes as possible so that you can go back and watch this video and do some of the things I'm going to teach you. So I'm going to give you a little bit of education and a little bit of practical information. So I suggest pulling out a pen and paper and writing down as much as you can and replaying this when you get the replay, watching this recording and doing some of the exercises that I'm going to show you after. So just a little bit about me. My name is Nyle. My pronouns are they, them. I'm an occupational therapist. I have been an OT for over a decade, and I specialize in all things fascia and connective tissue. I am one of those rare hands-on manual therapists. I mostly work with chronic pain patients, people who've kind of been through the cycle of looking for diagnoses, and they have pretty ambiguous diagnoses like fibromyalgia and autoimmune disorders. And I'm kind of the last stop on the end of their journey in an effort to get out of pain. So I work a lot on mindful movement and looking at your environment and what you're doing in your environment that may be contributing to your pain. And today I'm going to talk specifically about the workspace in relation to some chronic pain that I think many of us may be experiencing a year plus into working from home. So first I want to just give you some stats and kind of talk about what's happening to our bodies. So most of us have been in a home work environment for over a year now. Most of us have been really fortunate to be able to take our work into a home setting. However, I doubt that most of us, along with that transfer from office to home, did an ergonomic assessment. So even though we get to work from the comfort of our own home, and I have my cat sitting behind me and my kids in the other room, I can get up and go get a snack anytime I want, that doesn't exactly create for a mindful workspace. Workspaces are, when you go to the office, they're naturally designed to consider your ergonomic needs. Ergonomic just basically meaning your body in relation to your work environment and setting that up in a way that's most supportive for your postural needs and your needs for staying in a sustained position for a long period of time. So now that everybody's at home, what I'm seeing is more chronic repetitive strain than ever before, more pain than ever before. And it's because their workspaces aren't set up to allow for them to sit for long periods of time. A recent study that I found was, and actually NBC News recently did a whole thing on working from home. And one of the studies that they cited was a study that was done this past April showing that 50%, a little less than 50% of Americans are now working from home, and they're sitting for 8 hours a day while working from home. And I think the reason for that is because we don't have those natural cues that we have in the workspace for getting up. So we're staying at our seat for longer periods of time. On top of that, we're not actually sitting at our desk. So you see I'm at my desk now, but most people, and you don't have to out yourself if you don't want to, but I'd love to see just like a show of hands. How many of you work while sitting on the couch, for example? Yeah. Or at the kitchen table, all of these spaces that are not exactly designed for ergonomics. So I'm going to give you some tips for things that you can do. And if you can just check back in and make sure you're doing those things, you can pretty much work anywhere. But before I do that, I just want to kind of talk about some of the phenomenons that I'm seeing in people's bodies, just to give you a buy-in for doing this stuff. The first thing that I'm seeing more of in a clinical setting is something called chronic repetitive strain. It's most commonly associated with doing the same thing over and over for an extended period of time. Where I'm mostly seeing that chronic repetitive strain is in the back of the neck, in the low back, and in the wrists. So when it shows up in the wrists, it's called carpal tunnel. Now, even though I'm seeing more carpal tunnel than ever before, when you trace that back, the underlying cause of the carpal tunnel is neck and shoulders, tight neck, tight shoulders, because everything's connected. And I mentioned earlier, I work in fascia. So I'm always looking for how is your pain connected to a larger template in your body. So that's the first thing I want you to keep in mind is if you're having wrist pain or tingling in your wrist, somebody might be unmuted. If you could just mute your line, I'm hearing some background noise. Thanks. If you're having tingling or numbness in your fingertips, that's often a sign that you have carpal tunnel. And I invite you to really start to work on opening through the neck and the shoulders, and that will alleviate some of that. And I'll go over some tips for that in a few minutes. Another phenomenon that I'm seeing a lot lately, and I didn't know it was termed this until recently, but it's something called dead butt syndrome. So dead butt syndrome, aka gluteal amnesia, which is not nearly as fun to say, I think. But dead butt syndrome kind of says it all, right? Like you pretty much know what I'm talking about when I say that. And as you know, you can kind of assume that that has to do with sitting too long, right? And sorry, I'm laughing at some of the comments, y'all. Not Yael, y'all are being really funny right now. So dead butt syndrome, aka gluteal amnesia, is exactly that. The gluteus is the butt muscles, and this is specific to the gluteus medius, which is the kind of middle of the three butt muscles. That muscle is responsible for stabilizing the hip. And when it drops out, when the bottom literally drops out of it, it can no longer support and stabilize your hip. And if your hips can't be stable, you end up with low back pain because everything's connected, right? So we have two common things going on. The neck is kind of leaning forward into a screen, radiating down the arm, creating carpal tunnel. And then the butt is numb from the seated position for long periods of time. So the gluteus medius becomes very weak from prolonged sitting, making the hip very unstable, then leading to back pain. So now you know why you're feeling what you're feeling. But what I want to talk to you about is what you can do about it, right? So I'm going to give you some tips now, and this is where you probably want to take out your pen and paper, and you can always refer back to this video later and do it along with me. And if you're watching live now, I highly recommend doing some of the exercises with me that I'm going to show you in a little bit, just to give you an opportunity to get up. So the first thing that you can do is change your environment. So I'm sitting at my desk right now. Now, I am a clinician. I am in the clinic, in-person, hands-on. And if I'm not, I'm doing telehealth sessions. However, I'm not sitting and looking at the screen when I'm doing my telehealth sessions. I'm up and I'm moving, and I'm teaching embodied movement and therapeutic exercise. So that's my disclaimer to say my desk is not ergonomically correct. So I'm just going to put that out there now. However, it'll be a good way for me to show you some modifications that you can do if you're in a similar situation. So the first thing you want to consider when you're sitting at your desk is your body in relation to the computer. And a good rule of thumb is your body in a 90, 90, 90 degree position. So you're looking for 90, 90, 90 degree position. And what that means is are the angles of your body at a 90-degree angle. So 90 degree is that perfect angle, right? So the first angle of my body is actually my, and I'm looking at the main part of my body, not my elbows. I'll talk about my elbows next. So just the main part of my body, my torso on down. The first angle is my hips. Are my hips at a 90-degree angle? What would make them not 90 degrees is if I was sitting forward, I'm looking at my screen. What would make them not 90 degrees, and I think Mark is very aware of the 90-degree angle right now, is if you have to sit back away from 90 degrees. So you want to be at that perpendicular 90-degree angle at your hips. The second angle is your knee. So are your knees at a 90-degree angle? What would make them not 90 degrees is if your chair was either too high or too low. So if you have an adjustable chair, you can change the height to get your knees at 90 degrees, and you should have an adjustable chair if you don't. The third angle are the ankles. So the ankles should be flat on the floor. Now, this is something most of us don't do. Most of us are sitting cross-legged, and I bet if you're sitting cross-legged right now, you're probably uncrossing, aren't you? You should, because if your legs are crossed, you're tipping your pelvis, and then you're really putting more pressure on one butt cheek versus the other, and then you're going to end up with unilateral dead butt versus bilateral dead butt. So if you're going to have dead butt, you at least want it on both sides. So the ankles really tell you if you have both feet flat on the floor. The other thing is if your feet are kind of up on your toes, you're kind of tightening into your pelvis. I'm loving the comments. They're cracking me up. So the modification you can do for your feet, if they don't touch the floor, is you just get a stool and raise your feet up a little bit. Okay. So the ways to change some of the 90-90-90 degree angle is get a adjustable backrest, adjustable chair that goes up and down, and a footstool. Those are some things, if you're checking in and you're not at 90-90-90, that's something you can do. Now, the other angle I want to talk about is the angle of the elbows and the angle of the wrist, because this really matters. The same 90 degrees applies for the elbow. So when you're typing on your computer, and I'll just open up my laptop here. When I'm typing at my computer, you can see my elbows are not at 90 degrees, and that's what makes this workspace not ergonomically correct. My elbows are slightly closed. They're at about, 80, 85 degrees or so. So the way I would adjust this is I would get an adjustable keyboard that sits under, and you can get a keyboard that attaches to your desk and sits underneath. You can pull it out and make sure that your elbows are at 90 degrees. Along with the elbows, you also want to look at the wrists. Now, the wrists do not need to be at 90 degrees. In fact, you don't want them at 90 degrees. You want them either neutral or slightly up. The way to remember that is think about if this was like a gate, you're opening the gate. Thereby, you're opening the reticular frenulum is what this is called. It's a band of tissue that runs across the wrist. And when you close it, it shuts down the carpals, the medial nerve, thereby causing carpal tunnel. But if you open it, you're opening up the tunnel, and that makes for a better ergonomic space. So you want slight extension in your wrists when you're working, ideally. At the very least, neutral and never closed. Okay, so those are my tips to you. I would also look at things like where the monitor is in relation to you. Most of us are working from laptops. You can see I certainly am. That's not an ideal setup because the screen actually needs to be slightly raised so that the top of the monitor aligns with your eyes, right? So that's another tip from you for you. You want the top of the monitor to align with your eyes, and that keeps your head at a neutral position. Now, if I raised my laptop this high, then I would really be closing off my wrists and my elbows. So that's where you can install the detachable keyboard underneath. If you're just doing this temporarily, my suggestion is tilt the monitor back so that you can look down on it while you're typing. But ideally, you want to raise the monitor and have a detached keyboard for that. I'm going to mention one last thing before I move into the practical stuff, the movement stuff you can do, which is eye straining. Eye strain is actually one of the biggest computer-related strains or chronic repetitive strains I'm seeing right now in the clinic. And it's because people aren't thinking about that. They're not thinking about their eyes as muscles, but your eyes are muscles and they feed your nervous system, by the way. They're part of the cranial nerve complex. So if your eyes are strained, it's sending signals to your brain that something's not right. So I'm going to give you a practical thing you can do in a minute, but I want to say for right now, look at your lighting situation. We're talking in terms of the environment, changing the environment. Look at your lighting situation. If you can get a UV light that mimics natural light, that's better. The other thing you can do is start to wear blue lens blockers. If you don't have to wear glasses, you can wear blue lens blockers. And if you do have to wear glasses, they actually make overlays for your monitor that block out the blue light, and that will help with the eye strain. All right, so those are all of my environmental suggestions, but now I'm going to talk to you about the body, because at the end of the day, if you're not adjusting yourself in relation to your environment, you're only doing half of the whole, okay? So you'll see I have something around my neck here. It's not actually a necklace. This is something called a postural trainer. And I don't know if anyone has seen these. They have ads for them all over the internet right now. Facebook will find you and send you an ad at some point, I'm sure. But a postural retrainer sits on your back and it emits a little buzz down your spine anytime you're leaned forward like this. Okay, so this is good for tech neck, or if you're having trouble kind of sitting back in your chair. But if you don't know what to change, you're just going to keep getting buzzed at. So I'm going to give you a postural hack for how to change your posture in relation to your environment. And this is what I want everyone to do with me now, okay? I'll tie up my hair so you can see. So everyone sit back in your chair, put both feet flat on the floor. And the first thing you're going to do is tuck your chin under to give yourself a double chin. This is really attractive. And then pinch your shoulder blades together as if you were pinching a pencil behind you. You can even turn your palms up. And the last thing is tuck your pelvis under to bring your belly button into your pelvis. Sit up nice and tall. Take a slow breath in. Raise your eyebrows up and back down. And now drop everything down, but stay back where you are right now. That is your center. That's where you should be working from. So you can see it from the side. If I'm typing and the buzzy thing goes off on my back, tuck chin, pinch shoulder blades, tuck pelvis, take a deep breath in, drop it down, and then keep going. So you see now I'm away from the computer, and it eliminates that strain on the back of the neck so that the neck doesn't have to hold the weight of the head. So that will help with tech neck. So again, tuck chin, pinch shoulder blades together, tuck pelvis under, take a slow breath in, and relax it all down, then you can keep going. Okay, so I want to show you really quick some movement breaks. And I'm running out of time, so I can't talk a ton about movement breaks. But what I will say is if you're not doing them already, give yourself some grace around that. Know that nobody is. I've been doing this for over 10 years. And anytime I bring up getting away from your screen and taking a movement break, I can see the look of guilt in my patient's face. So give yourself some grace. And I'm going to take that into consideration when I talk to you about what you can do that's more realistic and that will set you up for success, right? So remember these three things from easiest to hardest: breathe, stretch, move, okay? So if you can't stretch and you can't move, then breathe. If you can breathe and do a little stretching, then do that. And moving is like the highest tier, okay? So if you can only breathe, breathe. If you can stretch, stretch. If you can move, move. It goes from easiest to most invasive, let's say, but also least therapeutic to most therapeutic. So breathe. Here's what I want you to do when you're breathing. You're sitting at your computer, and every 20, 30 minutes or so, you have a timer that will go off, whether it's on your Apple Watch or on your computer or what have you. The timer is going to go off and it's going to say breathe. At that point, you're going to take your blue lens blockers off. You're going to sit back in your chair, not even do the postural hack. The postural hack is something you should be doing every time you think about it. But this is to get an actual movement break. You're going to sit back in your chair, occlude your vision, which means just cover your eyes. You can put the palms of your hands on your eyes, and everyone can do this with me now and just listen to my voice. So put your palms over your eyes, sit back and take 4 deep breaths, in for 4 counts, and out for 4 counts. And I'm just going to keep it that simple for now. We can get fancy with the breath, and if you're somebody who knows about breath, you can get fancy with it. But for now, just take 4 breaths, in for 4 counts, out for 4 counts, while covering your eyes and sitting back. So that's your breath break. Then you don't even have to leave. However, your butt would love it if you would get up. So here's the second piece, which is stretch. So everyone can stand with me now. You can watch this on replay later, so you don't have to memorize it. We're going to stand, and at your chair, we're going to stretch. And here are the stretches you're going to do. The first one is you'll put one foot up on the chair, hold your leg, and do a little spinal twist, looking behind you. Taking 4 slow breaths in and out. In for 4 counts, out for 4 counts. Then bring that leg down and do the opposite leg. Twist, then hold your hip here. In for 4 counts, out for 4 counts. A total of 4 breaths. The breath is so important because your body's not going to turn off without it. The second stretch is you're just going to grab your ankle here and stretch your quad. Tuck your pelvis under a little so that'll lock in the quad here. Mark, you can't do this one. Not yet, anyway. Hold on to your chair. Take some slow breaths in for 4 counts, out for 4 counts. Switch legs and do it on the other side. So that's your stretch break. I'm only going to give you 2 to make it realistic. Then the last piece, that is the highest tier and most therapeutic, addresses that gluteus medius, that poor gluteus medius that so needs your attention right now. I'm going to flip the screen because I'm actually going to move a little bit so you can see me. So let's say you're getting up to go get a drink of water. This is what I want you to do when you get up to get water, okay? You're going to lunge to the refrigerator and then lunge your way back. So deep lunges. The other movement you can do is called a crab walk. Notice my hands are here in front of me. You're going to crab walk to the refrigerator and crab walk. I can't believe I'm doing this. Back. Okay. So it's leg out, meet legs together. Leg out, meet legs together. And if anyone wants to do this with me now, you can feel how it's waking up the glutes. You might even feel a little soreness in the low back. This is a wake-up call to the body. So this is the crab walk. And then the second one, you can bring your hands out in front of you again or on your hips. Lunge. And you can even do one in one trip and the other on the other trip back. Lunge, legs together. Then opposite leg, legs together. Lunge, legs together. Then opposite leg, legs together. All right. And I'll tell you what, I know this looks really silly, but here's the thing. our kids are seeing everything we do now, and they're seeing how we care for ourselves. So if you're lunging to the refrigerator and crab walking back, you're modeling to them what is needed to care for oneself. So in the end, it's good stuff, even if it looks a little silly. Right, I'm out of breath now, which is fine, so I think I'm way over time anyway. So thank you so much. And I don't know if we have time for questions, but I'm certainly willing to answer some if so.
Thank you, Nyle, so much. Should we take a couple of minutes for questions where, in case anybody have maybe do 2 questions? I don't think we have any other time in terms of me giving any updates. I'll do that next week. Those of you who worry about Delta strain, do know that looks like vaccines are still more than 85% effective against it. So that's a good news. That's all I was gonna give 60 seconds updates. But honestly, I don't see any questions. So I think that probably means we are ready to move on.
It looks like Carolyn has a question, actually.
Oh, okay.
Are you waving your hand there, Carolyn? Go ahead, unmute yourself.
Well, actually, I don't have a question. I'm retired now, but my last position was I managed a court reporting division of court reporters who sit in court and take the proceedings so many hours a day. And what the trainer is talking about is absolutely on point and true. You just have to take care of your body, and there are so many injuries. So I just want to underline that.
Thank you.
That's all personal experience. So good job.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you. That's it.
Well, great. With that endorsement, let's move on. Oh, there is a question, no?
No, I was just waving goodbye.
Oh, Nyle, I think there's a question to you specifically. So maybe you can take it off with the chat so that we can move on to Yael.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Can I make a comment? This is Irene.
Sure.
There's a saying that when you sit down to eat and everyone's quiet is because they're enjoying the food is so good. I think it applies here. There are no comments because everything was just perfect.
That's so sweet. Thank you.
It's true.
Thank you. Yael.
Yeah, I agree.
My dear.
Okay, I agree. That was awesome. That was practical yoga also as well. And so I'm actually wondering, I got my heart raised, and I'm wondering, and I also love working with the fascia. So one thing that also I like doing in this group, because Lee Frame is willing to be silly whenever I come on, is shaking, which is also a really wonderful stretch break. So let's do it. If you're in a chair, you can just sort of shake out through your hands. You could always just do it through one hand. It's super accessible. You can add in your shoulders. I'm gonna actually do it standing up for a second, just to give myself a break. And I'm just gonna let myself bounce. And the longer, I almost always do shaking with this group. You know, the longer I do it, the more I could find other things to shake. If I felt like it, I could dance around my room and take my vision somewhere else. And you don't have to do this that long. You could do it for 5 to 15 minutes. We're just gonna stop in a minute. I'm gonna do what's sometimes called empty coat sleeves. So just kind of rocking from side to side, letting my eyes get really relaxed. Good. And then just for now, we could slow down, maybe even close the eyes if that's comfortable for you, and just notice the nice little overall buzz that you may have created. Good. And then I'll invite everyone to come to a seat. And I'm just changing my view so that I can see all of you. Good. Welcome back. 2% better? Yeah, great. Nadia's giving me the thumbs up. So I'm a yoga therapist, and I was really thinking about what kind of mindfulness meditation we could do today. And it seems to me that one of the best things to use is our hands. Every single culture talks about the importance of the hands. I've actually put on my little hamsa earrings, which are, the hamsa is the symbol of the hands that's used. It's called the Hand of Mary by Christians, the Hand of Miriam by Jews, and the Hand of Fatima by Muslims. And the idea is that we use our hands for so many things: for cooking, for healing, for building, for touching, for sensing, for hitting, for hurting. If we're blind, our hands, right, are actually our eyes. We could think about that through Braille, through supplication. And in yoga, there is a belief that there's only one source energy, but that as that source energy comes down to earth, it separates into 5 different elements. It's very similar. So this is the sort of the South Asian cosmology or understanding of energy. And it's very similar for those of you that are more familiar with Chinese medicine, which has different 5 elements. But I've seen 5 elements also in the Andes in South America. Almost every single culture has a way of superimposing an energetic map over the human body. And the hands, and actually also the feet and also the ears, are considered to be where these energetic connections are made. And we could think about our fingers as being radio antenna that kind of channel in these different elements. And there's a few different ways. And so some of you might have heard the term mudra, and that's the Sanskrit word. Mood means pleasure or delight, and drew means to bring forth. And so the idea is that we use our hands to bring forth the bliss that's already within us. And I use these mudras when I have to be on screen. My hand, like as you can see right now, I'm on screen in a way that you guys can't see my hands. So sometimes I'm very secretly giving myself a hand massage or doing mudras that are targeted to what I need. So I'm sort of offering this to you for when you have to sit in that kind of context. So, okay, so there's 2 different ways of looking at the which elements are related to which fingers. So we're going to do the really simple one. I'll show you both of them. Actually, maybe, no, I'm not going to share my screen. I'll just show it to you. So in the first way, we're going to start with the element of earth, which is actually the pinky finger. And then the ring finger is the element of water. This will be the most pleasant part of the recording. Fire. This is another way we use our hands, right? The index finger is air, and the thumb is space. So earth, water, fire, air, and space. Okay, and so we could just take a moment and just do a very quick check-in with those 5 elements. Let's just take, so I'm gonna just lift up, I'm gonna do the ergonomically incorrect thing. So I'm just lifting up so you guys can see me, but feel free to roll your fingers in and just take your pinkies together, and then find a place to relax your elbows, relax your shoulders, since we have just learned how our neck and shoulders, right? It's all connected, right? So just kind of relax, take a nice deep breath here. If it's comfortable, you can close your eyes, but you could certainly also just do a soft gaze away from the screen. And the element of earth is really all about grounding. So just kind of allowing ourselves to feel connected to the solidity in our bodies, musculoskeletal system, feeling like we belong here on earth. And just sort of check out if you're sensing anything. This is just a quick kind of finger to the wind. Okay, and then release that. We're gonna keep moving. So we're gonna take the ring fingers together. By the way, if your hands don't curl in like this, no worries. Just do it in any way that's comfortable. So we're just talking we're just taking the ring fingers together, relaxing again, check in. And this is the element of water, which is about how all the liquid systems in the body, urine, blood, sweat, tears, lymphatic system as well. And it's how adaptable we are, how we go with the flow versus control. And just kind of checking in, how does this feel for you, if you feel anything? Okay, and then we're gonna move to fire, middle fingers, sorry, I actually love doing this. We'll take the middle fingers together. And this is all, fire is digestion. So if you think about it, when we digest, we take in matter, physical matter, and we convert it to kilocalories, which is energy. So we do this miraculous conversion in our bodies all the time. In the same way that the sun is converted into plant foods in the other direction, going from light to matter. How well are you digesting your food? How well are you digesting your relationships, your experiences? Do you take time to digest and process? Kind of checking out what seems true for you right now. Awesome. And then let's move to wind or air, and we could just bring those fingers together. Again, relaxing, just making sure there's no residual tension in the shoulders or neck. Take a deep breath. And the element of air is really all about respiration and circulation. Letting movement and distribution throughout your system. And it could be as gentle as a breeze or as intense as a hurricane. So notice if things feel evenly distributed in your system or if they tend to get a little stuck. That might be true of some aspects of other aspects of your life as well. So see if any of this resonates. Good. And then finally, we'll go ahead and we'll do the thumbs together. And the thumbs are the element of space or ether. It's the most abstract element, and it's really the container. So if you've ever heard anyone use the expression to hold space, I appreciate how she holds space for the group. This is the element. And actually space, we can think about our own physical spaces if they're orderly and organized and serve a good function, or if they're helter-skelter and chaotic and looks like a hoarder has descended, right, in our spaces. You could think about the difference in how we feel. Space is also our joints. It's how compressed things are versus how spacious. And so we just might tune inside and see how we feel internally, compressed versus open. Okay, and let's just take one more breath here. Good. And then feel free to gently open up the eyes. And I'm going to invite you to just roll your wrists around. You could do it with your fingers out. I kind of like doing it with my fingers out, or you could make fists and we'll roll in both directions. Also, it's just very pretty, isn't it? Good. And you could also play with rolling. I'm kind of letting the thumb not be a part of this, but you could play with rolling fingers in and out, and you'll get to feel this also along the forearms, and maybe just give yourself a shake before we move to the next way of looking at this. Okay, so that way of looking at the elements, earth, water, fire, air, and space, comes a little bit later. It comes from the tantric period. An earlier period, and this is like most of you have seen, if you've ever gone to any yoga class, you've seen this mudra, which is called jhana or gyan mudra, and maybe Anjali mudra, right? And so those gestures are based on an older philosophy of yoga, the Upanishads and the tattvas. And in that, it's a little bit different. This is water, and it's not as, it doesn't correlate with the chakras, so it's a little harder to remember, but this is water, earth, space, doesn't really work as well in our culture, air, and fire. Water, earth, space, air, and fire. And I'll make sure that I send this so that you guys don't have to worry about memorizing it. And so I thought what I would do is share just a few mudras based on that way of organizing our fingers, radio antenna, that might be helpful for conditions which a lot of us have. So actually the first one I want to do, and again, you know, I also just want to say that this is not just an Asian thing. Like obviously my name is Yael Flusberg. You can all guess that I'm Jewish. And if you remember, this was like the Spock, right, mudra. Do you guys remember this? This is actually at the Museum of American History. And it's the priestly blessing for Jews. It's a little Mork and Mindy. There's all kinds of fun things that you could do with this too. But Leonard Nimoy was an Orthodox Jew, and he was the one who created this in a way to give William Shatner, what's a nice way of saying this? Crap. That's not so nice. Because William Shatner was not a practicing Jew. So this is how the Vulcan salute came about. This is an actual mudra in Judaism. So, and you know, this is a mudra, right, in yoga, but it's sort of the universal mudra of prayer, of supplication. In yoga, this is a mudra that it doesn't really matter what it's called in Sanskrit or Pali, but it's an offering of flowers. And so it's a way of offering, right? And it looks like I'm offering you something. So in some cases, these mudras were just based on what we could see. Okay, so because a lot of us need more grounding, right? Whenever we go through a transition and we're re-emerging post pandemic, whenever we go through any kind of transition, ground is my philosophy. And the easiest mudra for grounding that I really like, and again, I'm going to hold my hands up. I don't want you guys to do it. I'm just doing it for visual purposes, is it's called Adi Mudra. We're going to take our hands, we're going to fold our thumbs to the inside of the hands. Oh, the transcript's really funny. And we're going to wrap all the fingers around our thumbs. And then again, you could just put it in your lap. This is a nice one to do in the winter also, because you could just put it in your pockets. This is a great one if you're around people. Close your eyes. We're just closing our eyes because 75% of our sensory information, for those of us who are sighted, comes through visual stimuli. And so the invitation to close the eyes is simply so that you can tune into the inner landscape. Once you're familiar with these and you have one or two go-to mudras, you could do it on the bus. You could do it with eyes open when you're at a Zoom meeting. And just sort of notice what it feels like. I find this mudra is one where I'm holding myself, and there's something very comforting about this. And for those of you who have very sensitive hands, or you're a little bit more sensitive to energetic sensations, you might find that your thumb, if you hold this for a couple of minutes, would even start pulsating. And these mudras these gestures are working even if they're not. You know, and you just might check in. How do I feel after doing this? Okay, so I'm looking, I think, all right, I found who was not muted. Okay, and then you could just shake out your hands. I thought we would do another one. Let's do one for arthritis and also for respiratory issues. So anything having to do with excess air. And it's called Vayu Mudra. And we would just hold up all of our hands and we're going to pin back. This was the air, right? So we're going to pin it back as high up as we can. It's probably going to go right below that joint. And again, you could just like this. By the way, these mudras, you know, like this is what we've learned thanks to neuroscience in the past 15 years. Even if you can't do these mudras perfectly, it doesn't matter. Just visualize it. Visualizing it is as good as doing it. Just like how we understand the importance of visualization as part of our recovery, post-surgery, in paralysis and amputation. And then just kind of tune in again. And you might feel the effects of this mudra a little higher in the body around that airy center, which is around the heart and the lungs. And again, if you had respiratory issues, I might prescribe 5 minutes of this a day, but for the purpose of this, we're just gonna let it go. Maybe even sigh and shake here. Okay. Let's take a mudra that is, because it's kind of the day before Juneteenth, let's take a mudra that almost every single African-American preacher I've ever seen, they do this without thinking. Barack Obama used to do this, Cornel West does it, and it's Hakini mudra. Sometimes you'll see it like this. So we're just taking the fingertips together. Hakini is, they're slightly different, but you could either take the thumbs together. Chaturmukham, which means two-faced, would just have the thumbs apart. So maybe see which one of these feels better to you. Again, resting your hands down. And this mudra, and there's also a spaciousness that's created, right, in doing this. And sometimes you'll see people talking like this. Barack Obama used to talk like this all the time. And this is really about both contentment and living more fully. And so this is a wonderful one to do, particularly in times where we feel a little bit more contraction, or we're coming out of a period of grief or trauma. As I like to say to my students, maybe God forbid, as you're doing this, bring a Mona Lisa smile to the corners of your lips, just to add to it. And again, just notice where the energy is here, or where your breath seems to want to go, where your awareness seems to want to go, the sensations in the fingers. And then we'll just shake that out. Okay, I think I have time for just one more. I want to do allergies because it's allergy season, and I could feel the moisture around my own eyes. So this one is called B mudra. And what we're going to do is the tips of the index finger curls into the thumb. And then I'm going to take my thumb to the outer edge of my middle finger. And you could do this. So index finger curls into the thumb, tip of the thumb to the outer index finger. I'm just going to keep this up for you guys, but feel free to relax your hands down, relax your shoulders, get inside, take a few breaths. So this is called B mudra. It's a little bit like in, we could sting ourselves with bees, right? To cure different ailments. Misha has his famous honey. We take a little bit of the allergens in our system in homeopathy. This mudra is a little bit like a homeopathic remedy. So if you suffer from allergies, B mudra, just taking another couple of breaths right here. All right, my friends. And then again, we'll just kind of release. Feel free to move in any way that feels good. Yeah, and thank you so much. This has been a great long live and prosper is right. This has been a great love of mine for many years. So thank you so much for practicing mudras with me today.
Thank you, Yael, and it's perfect timing. It's a marvelous weekend that is shaping to be, and we'll see everybody next Friday. Make sure you get outside. Nature is the first and the last healer we have.